If your blood runs orange and blue, this is the pod for you. You're listening to Orange and Blue Bloods, hosted by EJ Stewart and Tommy Beer. Let's get to it, New York.
We did have All-Star Weekend, which had its moments. First of all, shout out to Quentin Grimes, who played on Friday in the Rising Stars Challenge. He played really well in those games, by the way. He I think if they would have won that last game, he won MVP. He really caught fire, and I think if you're a Knicks fan, maybe you hope he can take some of that hot shooting into this last quarter of the season. But the Knicks did come home empty-handed. They did not win, obviously, in the Rising Star Challenge with Quentin Grimes. He didn't win the MVP of that. And then on Saturday night, you had Julius Randle finishing 7th out of 8 in the three-point contest, much to the chagrin of Kaiden Randle, his young son, who was seen on camera crying as his dad was missing the final shots in that competition. And then you had Jericho Sims, who finished 3rd in the dunk contest. Neither player for the Knicks qualified to enter the final round of those competitions. So not much from the Knicks this weekend outside of Quentin Grimes' impressive performances on Friday. Dame Lillard won the three-point contest, which is a long time coming for him. He's been in that thing for like years, and he usually does poorly. So I guess finally he got one. So congrats to Dame Lillard. And Mac McClung, who was not in the NBA when he was announced to enter into this dunk contest. He was in the G League, now on a two-way deal with the Philadelphia 76ers. He won the dunk contest. So let's start with the dunk contest and Sims in particular, because of course this is a Knicks podcast. What did you think of Sims' performance? Because there was a lot of fans that were hopeful that maybe he can get this, considering his great athleticism.
Yeah. First, I thought I found the dunk contest very entertaining. I enjoyed the 3-point contest. Even Friday night game, I thought was pretty cool. I liked they actually played with intensity. We saw the G League guys. We saw Grimes, who not only scored a bunch of points, did so efficiently, and put the clamps on Scoot Henderson.
Yes, he did.
So there was a that those games I liked. Maybe we talked about what could save the All-Star game. Maybe that format where there's break them up into 4 teams and have them play to set game to 40. I think all that stuff will be explored, but I think that makes sense to start with that as a potential starting point, because it seemed to work well for the Friday nights, the games on Friday night. The rookie, sophomores, and G League guys. As far as Sims goes on Saturday night, I think the things that kind of hurt him were the things that we suspected might going into the weekend.
Right.
It just there's a showmanship involved in all this, and I think the people around him, the idea when he clipped the paper to the net made a lot of sense in theory, but it's the way you present, it's the way you get the crowd excited before you dunk, it's your mannerisms, it's your excitement, it's your there's people who are good players, and then there are people who are great dunkers. And Mac McClung is a great dunker. Anybody who's had the internet for the past 5 years knows this. Since he was a junior in high school, sophomore in high school, he's been throwing down incredible dunks. So, nobody was surprised that I think people were surprised at how well he dunked. Or some people may not have been as familiar with
who he is,
with who he is and what that kid can do. But yeah, I thought Trey Murphy had some amazing dunks.
He did.
Some really good dunks. Kenyon Martin, wasn't great. But as far as Sims goes, I thought, in a different, you just look at the stills, the pictures of his 2 arms, in the honey pot, was impressive. But again, he's just not a guy. If you don't practice those dunks on a consistent basis, and Mac McClung over the past few days had figured out fine-tuned his routine, but he had been doing those dunks for years and years and years and years, and every time he goes into a gym, somebody asks him to do something along those lines, whereas Sims has never, it's basically just been stand underneath the rim, grab rebounds, and we throw an alley-oop, you'll get some cool dunks.
Right.
But that's basically what we saw from Sims. I don't think it was shocking.
Yeah, I think that the Sims performance was unfortunately a little predictable.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can judge book by his cover, and Sims, quiet, reserved guy, guy who's a great athlete, but for an NBA dunk contest, maybe not best suited because of the showmanship aspect that needs to be in there, the creativity that needs to be in there. Right. First dunk, 2 arms in the rim. I think a good idea. I think a good first dunk. He didn't nail it because he didn't put both in immediately, so that kind of hurt him there. But you think, okay, you did that dunk, now you gotta go to something different, and then he kind of go into a similar dunk, or almost the exact same dunk, on the second one where he puts his arm in the rim and then pulls out the 50 score, in the envelope, which I was a little confused by that dunk because like I thought that when he did it, I was like, okay, maybe he's gonna like put his arm in the rim and like pull it from like underneath the net, which actually would have been pretty impressive. But then he just grabbed it with the other hand. So I was just like, what was the point of the envelope? So not it seemed a little half baked there, not necessarily the most creativity, and he didn't have a lot of energy involved. So good dunks, decent dunks. He didn't embarrass himself by any means, but not enough. And Mac McClung, can't say enough about how awesome he was. And I'm glad the NBA put him in the dunk contest. Yes. I know that, Kevin Durant on the Cetera's podcast was like, what are we doing putting Mac McClung in the dunk contest? And to Kevin Durant's credit, he is trying to say, hey, we need to get stars in there. And I agree with that. But if they didn't put Mac McClung in that contest, that would have been another probably mediocre dunk contest. Like Trey Murphy did really well, but it wouldn't have been the second guy who would have been able to really compete with him probably. So we would have been disappointed again. So I'm really happy that the NBA said, all right, fine. If we can't get NBA players to do it, let's just find the best dunker who's NBA affiliated or close to it that we can put in. And people forget, it's not the first time they did this because people keep saying it's the first time because Derrick Jones, who, is in the NBA a bunch of times now, he was almost essentially a G League player when he entered the dunk contest the first time around. He's been on the Suns, he's been on the Heat, he's played on a bunch of teams. Like he played like only like 3 or 4 games in the NBA, but he is known as a dunker. Anybody who watched Derrick Jones clips knows that he's kind of like a Mac McClung. Like, there are a lot of these high school kids who kind of got on just because they're incredible dunkers, and you can go on YouTube and watch their high school mixtapes. So they put him in there too. That didn't work out quite as well the first time. He actually ended up winning it in later years. So the NBA has done this before where they get a guy who's like very much a fringe NBA player who gets in. But McClung was great, and the question becomes, did he actually save the dunk contest? Like, it's tough because I think he'll be great next year when he does it again, because I'm sure he'll do it again, and the NBA will beg some team to sign him to 2-way so that they can make sure. That's definitely what happened. They definitely called all 30 NBA teams and said, hey, we got to get this guy a 2-way deal so he's not out there in the G League uniform in this competition. So the Sixers did the bid. So congrats to the Sixers. Now you have the first Sixers that won a slam dunk contest. People forget Dr. J didn't win a slam dunk contest as a Sixer. He lost to Larry Nance in the first NBA one, and in the ABA one, of course, when he won, that was with the New York Nets at that time. So Philly has a dunk contest guy. Congrats to Mac McClung. Do you think we'll ever get stars back into this slam dunk contest?
I don't think so. I don't think there's a motivation. It's a motivation factor, especially with the onset of social media. John Morant doesn't need to do dunks in the dunk contest for people to know that he can fly. He does them in games, and then we watch him on social media that night and the next morning and all the shows. So I don't think I don't know if it'll benefit him to the point, it's kind of a pros and cons thing. It would raise his profile to a certain degree. We saw Tatum win the All-Star MVP with his new shoes on. That was kind of a cool subplot. But again, for a guy like John Morant, if he doesn't win the dunk contest, then then that's the story. Like, you claim you're this great dunker. I'm sure that's factored into LeBron and other guys. It's basically a lose-lose situation. If you win, it's because, of course you have to win. You have no choice. Right. And if you lose, then you let somebody named Trey Murphy beat you, or Mac McClung, who people hadn't heard of. So I just don't know. There will be stars. I'm sure we'll get a couple guys spliced in. We've seen in the past. Blake Griffin was an all-star. Zach LaVine,
Howard,
player, you've seen some guys that maybe not top 5, top 3 players in the NBA, but up in that top 15, top 20 class, all NBA caliber players. So I think you'll get those guys here and there, going forward.
Yeah, I am hopeful that we will get it. To me, I feel like it only takes one. Like, I think once we get the one guy to do it, and I think somebody's gonna decide, what, I'm gonna do this because for whatever reason. I think that you'll start to then trickle down and get some guys. Like, it feels like the last 4 or 5 years, like, you said before, like, we've gotten pretty good players in dunk contests in the past. It feels like the last 4 or 5 years, they've really been just like purely guys or bench players or guys who are fringe rotation guys. I think that there's a chance we can get back to getting some stars, or at least starting players. Like, when I grew up, like, like Jason Richardson won dunk contest. Like he was a good player. Like this is a guy who was a starting player who won a national championship in college. Like there was a time where like, okay, maybe it wasn't the superstars, but there were guys who you knew. Like you knew everybody who was in the dunk contest. Andre Iguodala, Nate Robinson. Like these are guys that you were familiar with. May not have been superstars, but at least they were familiar guys. It was unfortunate with what happened on Saturday was while all those guys are great athletes, none of those guys are guys who are consistent rotation guys, except for Trey Murphy, who does play consistently for the Rocket, or that you mean for the Pelicans. But but a lot of guys that people didn't know. So if we even get to those days where we can get starting caliber players in the dunk contest, that'd be great. But I think that there's a chance we'll get stars at some point. We're in a bad stretch right now. But I'm happy that Mac did what he did, because there are some people saying you need to kill a dunk contest, and I don't think that's going to happen now. Like, he showed that there's still a reason to watch, that there's a reason to pay attention, and that new dunks can be done. Like every dunk that he did had some kind of unique variation that we had not seen before. And he said before dunk contest that I have dunks that nobody's seen. So I think that these guys got to get creative. Yep. And I think also credit to the fans as well, who I think, not that Mac wasn't great, but I think they really did appreciate his creativity. Yeah. Like they weren't saying, oh, like jump over a car or light yourself on fire and do something like he didn't have to pull out crazy gimmicks for people to like appreciate, oh, wow, what he did was actually incredible. Yep. So credit to everybody kind of understanding that. And Trey Murphy too. Well, like besides the Alvarado dunk, didn't really involve anything. It was just his athleticism, which is, as we learned, elite. I didn't realize he can get up like that.
Same.
So great performance by him. It was awesome to see the dunk contest. And unfortunately, Julius didn't do well in 3-point contest. I don't think anybody was too surprised by that. But again, shout out to the young QG Quentin Grimes for doing his thing on the Rising Stars competition. So as